You're about to listen to an episode we recorded with Camilla Rogers. Camilla is the founder of 50/50 Coaching, and in this episode, you're going to learn about why mental health fitness is so important for business owners, how to maintain high performance as a business owner, why you must reframe resilience to bounce back ability, and the importance of continuing to show up even when the going gets tough. Camilla gave some really great advice to anybody who is looking to start a business or anybody who is currently in the trenches building their business. We hope you enjoy. How do you go from the fast-paced corporate environment to running your own coaching company?
Good question. So it was a little bit of a while in the making, if I'm honest. It wasn't something that was just overnight a decision that I made. It probably stems back to, I think this goes back to 2012. 2012. So I'm looking at your numbers on your sheet. Yeah, 2012. And I was working in a large corporate. I was working for HSBC at the time, and I'd been selected to go on this really good sort of talent leadership program, Emerging Leaders, and they plucked 80 of us from around the world and put us all over into Argentina and got us to work with non-profits across the whole of Argentina in smaller groups. And we had to help these non-profit businesses grow their working capital without compromising their values. And at that point of my life, I had never really experienced coaching. I'd never experienced executive coaching because back then it was really for the executives, and that wasn't my level at the time. And I really felt quite overwhelmed and quite empowered by the strength and the sort of opportunity that came through being coached and watching myself progress over the next sort of 12 months. With coaching, I think most people that have been there will recognise there's a huge level of transformation that can take place as well. So that began to kind of really shift my perspectives. And to cut a very long story short, I basically felt like I was misaligned in my corporate career and something was missing. And I went on my own journey. I serendipitously fell into coach training, thinking I was on a trip to India to travel for 5 weeks, and rocked up and realised actually I'd signed up to a training programme. And I would never have done that. I genuinely would never have done that had I not have just thought I was doing something else. Resisted it, really was like in Delhi going, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do more training. I've done a degree in economics. I've done finance exams. I don't want more training. And I remember being really angry about it. But I think sometimes when the student is ready, somehow the teacher will appear and you just go with the flow. And from that moment onwards, I was on a journey to discovering the power of coaching, later how it can impact your mental health. And then in a place where I just always knew in the back of my mind that I had a business in me, it was just about working how that would be. And obviously the coaching led me there.
So how long has 50/50 been going?
So we set up officially in 2020. We launched in 21. Well, we started trading in 21. Okay. So a few years now. Difficult context to start a business in.
Yeah. Like, how did that work?
It's been tough because as much as the conversation around mental health and mental fitness within the workplace in particular has really opened up, there's a really... we've been in really retractionary markets. You know, it's not been money, it's not been budget. I'm so sure we all experience in businesses, especially for B2B sales. And it's been much longer sales cycles than I would have anticipated because of the indecision and people being uncertain around their own financial future as a business. How much have they actually got disposable in what is still considered a nice to have? And that's the problem we're at the moment, is that the world of business hasn't quite caught up with the reality of where we're at as a nation, that actually this is fundamental to company performance as opposed to it being a tick box exercise or something that's nice to have.
We'll come on to...
It's nice to hear though, isn't it? Like the fact that you're saying there about like the sales cycles have elongated and like people are holding on to the purse strings a lot tighter, and it's nice to hear that, right? Because like, we're in totally different industries. We sell marketing services, obviously you're selling mental health and business coaching. It's the same thing, right? We have seen that we used to go for sales cycles of we could get a deal done in 4 weeks. Yeah. Now some of them can take almost 12 months probably before they come off. And
it's hard work because you're constantly trying to keep them going. You don't want to lose, but you've got to move on to the next opportunity and you've got to keep growing, haven't you? So yeah, it's definitely a sign of the times. And the way I think about it, and as a coach, I love to try and reframe a situation. So I try and look at it and I try and flip the lens and think, okay, how can I look at this differently? And I think one of the things that I try and say is, because we're a new business and because we're sort of, on our first few years journey, if we can be that business that people by default know and understand are the go-to for the coaching space for mental health and what we can do in that preventative space, then this is the legwork that I'm going to do. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm the one banging the drum loud enough so that when budgets do come back in and when people do have a bit more time to kind of energise that side of their business, I'll be the logical person they call.
Yeah.
Before we come on to all the mental health, fitness and kind of a bit more, just interested because, again, this is about building and just from the very start, what was the actual trigger point that led you to starting the business? I know about, you've just obviously discussed the journey, but was it a case of like over a few months you gradually realised, yeah, okay, I'm going to start this business? Or was it one thing that made you go, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing it now?
So in 2015, I returned from taking 2 years out travel. I just decided I was going to go and travel the world, finish off my coach training. I'd left HSBC because I was misaligned I didn't feel the passion. And I needed to get my head straight. I needed mental space, to be honest. I needed to do something different. And for the whole of my life, I'd followed my head and been really kind of, studious and appropriate. I don't know what the word is, but I did the right thing all the time. And actually, I wanted to be a bit more reckless, and I wanted to go and travel and follow my heart and do very different things. And actually, it was a really amazing experience, and that's a story for another time. But upon return, I had no money, I had no home, I had some money tied up in a small investment property that I'd done before I went away. I had no job. And I wrote some audacious goals. I wrote 3 goals. One was to increase my property portfolio to £1 million. One was to have a coaching business that transformed lives. And one was to be able to have the freedom and the flexibility to pick up a child, if I had one, down the road. And I really wanted to be able to have that lifestyle. And this was at a time when I didn't have a boyfriend or a partner or anything. So it was kind of quite big goals. And I set the deadline of 5 years, and that would have been 2020. And I achieved all of them within that time frame. But I took steps along the way to make it happen. And I think my turning point was a couple. So my journey over those 5 years was being diagnosed with endometriosis, which is quite painful, very painful at times, and navigating that journey of being diagnosed 25 years too late and being told my fertility at the same time was near enough on the floor was a big pill to swallow when I was 36 years old, not in the headspace to start a family. But that was the advice I was being given. Have the therapy or have the treatment and all of the stuff you need to do, or have a child now. You're like, okay. And if you have the treatment, you're not going to be able to have any children. And if you have, you might not be able to have a child unassisted. So it's all this stuff's been thrown at me, and my mental health was really, really impacted by that because I was having to make these decisions, and it was big life stuff, big stuff you're going on. I'm also navigating a career at the time. Then I did fall pregnant very quickly and very unexpectedly after a failed round of egg freezing treatment, which I didn't get to the point of even being able to finish that treatment. So I really didn't think it was possible. And then lo and behold, my now 6-year-old little miracle boy was then conceived a month later. And then I was thrust into a world of mat leave and return to work and kind of all those moments. There were lots of points along the way where I needed support, where the mental health programs within the company I worked at the time were not good enough. They were not fit for purpose. They were actually pretty bad in some instances. And that's the world of EAPs, employee assistance programs. One at the moment called Health Assured is up under BBC Watchdog scrutiny. It's been all over the papers that there's loads of problems with it. And I think the reactive support that we have in organisations is pretty much broken and very limited in the success. And that's one of the reasons that I started thinking there's an opportunity here with 50/50. So my mind was whirring all the way through that 5-year trajectory, more so towards the end when I started having big life milestones that were seemingly leading me to kind of fix. I wanted to fix them. I wanted people to have an option to deal with what they were going through before they hit the crash and burn. And that's the problem, was that we wait with mental health for people to get to the place where they can't do any more because they're broken, and then they get the support. And I think we needed to reshift. We needed to shift the narrative there and get people to get some help beforehand.
Oh, incredible. Before we kind of shift on to the mental health, fitness and kind of all of that side, because I'll say it now, I'm a bit scared of this podcast and asking those questions because A, I don't want to say the wrong thing, and B, me and Harry have differing kind of aspects around mental health and the fitness side of it, just through experience basically. But More about your business. Let's fast forward to right now. Obviously, you've gone through the hard years, the COVID lockdowns, and all of that. How do you currently get your clients?
So we have historically grown all of our clientele through my network, and we're now at a point where we're looking more strategically at how can we grow that beyond what is my natural organic opportunity, I guess. So I have tried having a salesperson, but because of the sales cycles, it's been really hard to justify that salary with knowing that actually I could probably still keep doing that myself as a founder. So I tried and sort of let that go. That will be the first hire I make. The first full-time hire will be someone in to run the sales alongside me, because I think no one can sell your business like you, but equally you can do with more manpower always. I spend about 98% of my time selling, and that's the most important thing for me. So really what I'm trying to do is I go to a lot of networking events. I go to a lot of trade shows. We've started to exhibit more. We're starting to be a lot more public. I use LinkedIn a lot. I'm trying to get the right data. I'm trying to build a database. I've tried buying data before. It doesn't really work. So yeah, just trying to do as much outbound. But having had a background in sales, the world of sales has changed post-COVID for me. People don't answer their phone anymore. You should be able to ring people up, and that would be quite a differentiator, because a lot of people are scared of the phone. And I think this new generation of talent that are coming through the market see a phone call and genuinely think someone's dying. Like, why would they speak to someone on the phone? Like, you know.
How many times? Like, I used to, so in our last place, so when I first started work, Brandon was my boss, and then we moved into a new agency, and then over time, like, he ran the SEO team, and like, I was overseeing things. And how many times did we used to have an argument because I'd be like, oh, have you spoken to this person? And he'd be like, yeah, they emailed. And I'm like, did anybody call them? I was like, no, we can't do that. But there is definitely, it's something about that, isn't it? That, it is a differentiator. That's what we've been trying to say. It's like picking up the phone.
It really is, but if you can get through to people, amazing. I'm often trying to get hold of HR directors, or the heads of people, chief people officers, or the people with the wellbeing remit within an organisation, which often sits in HR.
Yeah.
And that's really hard, and especially I think because calls are screened a lot for that reason.
Yeah.
People are busy back to back. People work hybrid, therefore, when they're in the office, they are literally back to back, which is not very good, but it's the way of the world. So yeah, definitely a few more challenges to overcome. We're still working on.
How are you finding exhibiting? Like, that's something that we have been on the fence about.
I think it's hit and miss, and it really depends on the footfall and the quality of the people that are there relevant to what you're trying to achieve. So I did one recently where I was less impressed because I think the footfall was diluted by a sort of neighbouring exhibition that wasn't quite as relevant to us. And also there were basics that were not in place, like the lanyards were not differentiated, so you couldn't tell if someone was an exhibitor or a delegate from just a quick glance. So you're there trying to look at someone's name tag that's hanging down by their waistline, and you're like that at your stand, and that's really hard. You kind of need to, so we're learning as we go that these are some things that we need to be clear about first. Yeah. But I think being out there and being visible is important, and that's part of our strategy from a marketing standpoint.
It's interesting because our journey sounds like from the sales front has been quite similar. So I think it is for a lot of new businesses in the sense of like the growth initially comes from like that existing network, and then at some point you kind of run dry on that and you have to go expand that network. And I think the style of sales we're in is quite similar. Like we need to speak directly to a decision maker, like probably going to be like CMO level or maybe like marketing manager level. So we have to sell in similar ways. We also, like our first hire was a salesperson. Yeah. But sales cycles are so long that it was really hard to see if it was working or not. You don't know, and like
because the traditional business advice is like you just need 3 months salary in the bank in order for a job to really start paying for itself, especially in sales. It's not the same. It's not the same at the minute. The market isn't there for us to be able to take that investment. You need basically 12 months to bankroll that, and that's a big investment when you're talking sales salaries and senior sales salaries.
Yeah, because we have I don't know if it'd be the same, but like there is a. To be fair, there'll probably be a blocker, but it's different. So our blocker definitely is a lack of trust in our industry. It's like you have to overcome that trust, and I do think if you're not buying from like the real senior people or the owners in like an agency front, for example, it's hard to get that authenticity across from a salesperson, right? Because as soon as you hear sales in someone's job title, there's that like thing of like they're just trying to get me to sign whatever deal possible. Yeah, and I would imagine, like you say, at the moment in what you're doing, it is definitely considered a luxury.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would imagine if someone, again, has sales in their job title, it's really hard for them to overcome that barrier in the short term.
I don't want to have a sales image for 50/50.
Yeah.
You know, it's not part of our core brand. You know, we consult, and yes, we're here to help people in their worst moments, but also to help companies safeguard against the costs that come with poor mental health within the business. And that you don't really want to have a team of salespeople, you know, that are hungry and kind of voracious in their approach. You don't want that. So you have to kind of think about the tone, the delivery, how they're actually going to speak to people.
And the marketing, I guess.
Yeah, the marketing.
So how much time have you spent on the marketing front?
So I sort of lump it in together,
Okay.
From the standpoint that I think everything that we do is about how we talk about ourselves, how we promote what we're doing, and how we get that out to the right people. So I've been attending more and more like HR events where I'm kind of an extension of a HR team in our world, but we're not actually physically in-house HR. But that's been really helpful because I can understand the pain points they're going through, some of the challenges, and build connections that right now might not be. So I market kind of under the radar, if you want. So it's more through building trusted relationships where people can see you as, yeah, actually, I've watched her for a bit. I've seen her posts. I know what she's talking about. I know a few of the companies she works with, and it kind of begins to build the picture, and then the conversations will start to come. And we've got this new website kind of coming up in the next month or so, and we're bringing it kind of all of our learnings since we wrote the website originally. When we were proving the concept of what we needed, now we need to demonstrate that we've got the solution and we've got the case studies to go with that. So it's kind of like shifting a little bit away from the way we were talking about it to how we want to showcase what we're doing.
Are there any like tendencies within the buyers that you've noticed? Like I don't know, is like a male-female split of like females more welcoming to it, or have you seen anything like that?
I can't say I've noticed that. Sometimes some businesses are quite reactive to wanting to solve a problem.
Okay.
So they might do an employee survey and mental health might score quite low from a wellbeing standpoint within the workplace relative to other scores they might have around engagement and other points. I think often then there's that knee-jerk, we need to do something. There's almost like the justifiability that we can now invest some money in this because actually we've got to, because otherwise we're going to start to lose people. Until they can see that kind of on paper, it's, you know, it can be hard to justify. So I'd say in those instances, I could get a phone call from anyone. I get a phone call from a CEO, from a managing partner, from a head of HR, and often, as much as we are preventative, we've also got same-day support available around getting people into a conversation with one of our coaches or therapists around how we might be able to support them longer term. So with NHS waiting lists where they are, and with people's mental health where it is, you know, we've got a solution to a lot of people's problems.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice segue into, I think for me this is going to be really interesting now, talking about asking these questions, but I think we'll start kind of broadly and ask you, what is mental health fitness?
So we talk about mental fitness specifically, and I always use the word bounce back ability. I always think that that's a nicer word than resilience. Yes, we talk a lot about resilience, and resilience comes to mind, you know, like high-performing athletes, right? And you think about them being so, you know, able to withstand 5 hours on a tennis court in Wimbledon during, you know, beating hot sunshine. But I think what we need to think about is that we all have, if we're all different and we've all got an elastic band, your elastic band might stretch really, really far and mine might be here and ready to snap. Our capacity is very different. So we talk about being able to thrive, be creative, turn up, be our best self, be authentic, be open, perform well, and feel generally happy. And that's what we mean by being mentally fit. And for an employer, that's really important because you want people to bring their creativity to work. You want them to feel empowered to be authentic and bring their true selves forward. You want them to be able to show up even when they're struggling, but have a conversation around how they might need support. So we're talking about it from, you know, a whole 360 view.
And I presume there's different ways of helping people with that, you know, coaching. What is the difference between coaching and therapy?
Put simply, therapy is more backward-looking and appropriate to really deal with something that's more traumatic that you might have gone through in your past. And it will help you to process that, work through that, and come to terms with what you've been through. Whereas coaching is more forward-looking, helping you to drive a path forward. You might touch on some things in the past, but really you're thinking about how are you going to get from A to B, and what way is going to work for you, and what are your goals and your kind of aspirations to achieve it. And what we're trying to do in a world that's been very traditionally pre-COVID, if you've got a mental health challenge, or if you're feeling mentally unwell, or if you have a mental illness, it must be in the domain of therapy. It must be medically supported. And what we've tried to do with 50/50 is to break that stereotype, break that down a bit, and say, actually, there's a huge amount of support you can give to somebody who is mentally struggling. And mental illness isn't synonymous with mental health. And that is really important. Like, just because we are mentally struggling, or we're not feeling mentally fit, or we're not in a good place right now, doesn't mean we're mentally ill and diagnosed and therefore in that space. And I think that distinction's important. We all have mental health. We're all on a spectrum. We can all have days that are different, and we will all fluctuate all the time, just like we do with our physical health. There's no difference there. So the coaching element is very much around saying, okay, so how far can we push the boundary between therapy and coaching ethically? So we train all of our coaches with an International Coach Federation stamped overlay training, just to navigate that boundary, just to recognise at what point should we signpost to therapy. We have therapy in-house at 50/50 because deep stuff can come up during coaching. And that's really important to be able to ensure that they can get that extra support. And in some of our partners, they don't have therapy provisions for their staff, so it's really important we have it. Otherwise, we would just signpost them on to the support they already have in place for their people.
Again, being open, I've never had like coaching, therapy, anything like that. I've always felt like I've been mentally quite strong.
Yeah.
There may be signs that I'm not. Maybe I do need to speak to people. But how dangerous is the kind of saying, I'm fine?
Well, I think it's fine if you're fine. But the reality is often we're not. And often it can be really hard to find the words or even have the capacity to entertain the conversation. You shouldn't ask someone how they are if you're not prepared to hear the answer. Now, when I was returning from mat leave, 2018, into a promotion at a really cool company, really loved working for them. They were very pro mental health as well. All these conversations were coming up where I just chose to be authentic. So when people ask me, oh, hey, you're a new mum, do you want to come to I put a post up for this about LinkedIn the other day, do you want to come to this room 101, we've got loads of donuts for new mums? And I was like, I need way more than a donut. I mean, I'm going through so much. And at that point, I had a relationship breakdown, I was moving home, I'd just returned to work, and I was a new manager, and I had new team members. And I had to get my head back into the game after a year out. It was tough. And I started being open, and everybody, and when I stopped saying I'm fine, and I asked everyone that I chatted to, I said, well, how are you? And they're like, actually, if I'm going to be really honest. And that just began the reality for me in beginning to see how much we all have going on, that we all stack and try and hide. But in doing so, it's a heavy load. We're literally weighed by it. If you're caring for a really sick relative, member of your family, if you're going through IVF, if you're going through relationship breakdowns, if you're dealing with a neurodiversity diagnosis, if you've got a chronic illness, if you're dealing with pain day to day, if you've just had something go wrong in your life generally, and you're trying to put that to one side and focus on your job, it can be really, really hard to do that. And that's what feeds into the biggest contributor to mental health costs in the UK, which is presenteeism. When we're sat at our desk, we're there, but we're not there in our mind. We're elsewhere. We're taking breaks to make calls. We're looking at our phones to check the messages. We're worried. We can't focus. So that was when I really began to see that people need a space to unpack all of that stuff. Forget that I'm fine. Keep the I'm fine for work if that suits, but actually have somewhere to vent and have somewhere to actually properly work through. This is not tea and sympathy and nice conversations. This is, let's get you unstuck. Let's move you forward. And that's why we use coaching as kind of our default approach.
Because I presume people come to you for help. If a company's signed up to it, again, it's only certain people who realise, yeah, I need that help. I could see that would help me. Mm-hmm. Then you've got a lot of people who are probably like me, who are like, I don't need help, I'm fine, and wouldn't ever use that. Yeah. Do you see that often?
You'd be surprised. So we work with one company in the city who've got about 220 staff. We've now coached over 110 people at their company. we've got about 60% of those that rebook regularly. And a lot of those were like, I wouldn't have known what to come to coaching for, to be honest. But because we talk about it as a way to safeguard your future mental well-being, to put the right boundaries in place to help you perform, but also have a space to unpack what you might be going through. And it could be work-related, it could be personal, more often it's both. You'd be surprised at how many people do approach it. I think you're right, it's not everybody will need it. The best analogy I can give you is something a client said to me, which was 50-50 is like the physio table after the football match. Most people will walk past it knowing it's there, but feel a huge amount of security around knowing where to go if they've got a problem. Then there's the ones that come off limping that need some immediate support, and they've got to go there and have something there. And then you've got the ones that will dip in and out monthly for that massage to keep them in peak performance. And that's what we're trying to do, and we'll appeal to very different people for those reasons.
So, let's break down some of those barriers. So, for some context, I am diagnosed medically with OCD. Yeah. So, I've been in therapy for a long time.
Okay.
There's not a lot of barriers there for me because I've seen behind the curtain and what happens.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, haven't. So, practically speaking, Brendan rocks up for a coaching session. Mm-hmm. What should he expect?
Well, first of all, Brendan should only rock up if Brendan wants to. We're not in a space where we're forcing it on people. And often all the times we work with organisations, it's walk toward. So it's book as you need, go as much as you want. It's there as a service. But if you were curious and you'd wanted to sort of just test it out and see how it could elevate your performance, how it might help you to be more focused or structured or potentially avoid any burnout down the road, then it's about being open and authentic and sort of sharing where you're at right now, why you might be cynical. And I think a really good conversation could be around this, your views around it and where they stem from and what might be holding you back. That could be there. Or you can just sort of dive straight in with something, really simple exercise around looking holistically at your life, thinking where you are at, even out of 10, a quick score out of 10 as to where you think you are at with regards to fitness, money management, time with your family, quality time with your family, how you're dealing with work, how you're handling certain areas, other areas. You can populate your sort of own wheel of well-being based on all the areas that you might find interesting. It could be spirituality.
The wheel of well-being.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And it's really helpful because it's very simple, basic coaching, but it just gets you to quickly visualise where you're at. And then straight away you can see, actually, do you know what? There are some things here that I might be compromising in order to make this out here. And it kind of helps you to recalibrate. So we would recommend that everybody comes off their own volition, but if you're open and curious, and there are lots of ways we can help. There's not one senior person in business that hasn't had a coach, generally. If we're talking senior people that we all aspire to, in politics, in leadership, everyone has a coach. So it's about how can we optimise ourselves as well as safeguard our mental well-being, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to help people be the best version of themselves, understand their boundaries, work through their own mental health challenges. If they're working also with a therapist around their mental illness, that's brilliant too. You can have the two aligned, and you can kind of work on one thing there and then continue the coaching, or you can come back at a time when you might have calmed down on some of the therapy side and then ready to do something more forward-looking.
So let's focus on business owners for now, and then we'll look at it from the other side of employees as well. Are there any quick fire or tips you can give to business owners for themselves staying mentally fit?
I think it's really hard for me even to practice what I preach. I've had to really, really have strong conversations with myself. I had this narrative that I used to play out all the time, which was, I drop my son at school and I pick him up. It's sacred time for me. I take him to his clubs. I really enjoy being there. But I'm often literally using that 4-minute walk to try and get myself out of work mode and into mum mode. And that can be a really difficult thing to do quickly. And sometimes Ruben will say to me, "Mummy, you're not listening, are you?" I said, "Darling, I'm still processing a conversation I've had. Give me 5 minutes. Mummy's just calming down after a busy day at work. I just need a little bit of time to decompress, and then we'll have a quick chat, and then I'll be back in the flow." So I've had to explain things as my son's got older. I've had to allow myself to take time out during the working day for me, which was a big no-no in the first 2 years. I was like, I can't, I've got 6 hours. I've got 6 hours. And it's amazing what you can do in 6 hours. Yeah. And there are great techniques to focus your mind. But I used to work from like 8 o'clock till 7 or 8 o'clock at night as a minimum. You know, that was my London hours, and that was every day. So now to just be given 9 till 3, it's like, so how am I going to cope? How am I going to do it? But the productivity is just elevated because you are just bang, 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 and you get a lot done. But carving out an hour to exercise or to do something that's good for my mind and switches up how I use my mind. Like, for example, I've started learning to read music and playing the saxophone this year, and really like a brand new thing for me. And that's really hard, but also gets me out of my kind of thinking head and into a different part of my brain. I like to go to the golf range and hit white balls because I can't not think about them. And I have to think about what I'm doing with my golf, because the minute I stop doing that, I won't hit the ball.
How are your anger levels?
Yeah, we both perked up. As soon as you said golf, we were like, yeah, okay, we've got it.
Yeah, so I like to do things that use different parts. I speak Spanish, so you use different parts of your brains for different things. So trying to switch that up is really helpful. Allowing myself to have that time out and reframing it from, I haven't got enough time, to, I will be a lot better and I will be more present as a mum, because I won't be so stressed later. Because as a single parent, I can't just go out for a run at 8 o'clock at night once he's gone to bed. I have to do everything at home, and sometimes when you work from home a lot, you need to get out, you need connection, you need other humans, you need to laugh. These are all fundamental to our well-being. And when you're holding up yourself, working all the hours, not permitting yourself time out because you haven't got time, then it's a desperately downward spiral.
You said something at the start there that definitely, that we've had this conversation quite recently, which is when you make that transition from like employment to self-employment, we both found it really hard to not just go back to that, like, well, I used to work 8 till 4, so I work 8 till 4 every day. And like you say to me quite a lot, you'll be in at like 9, you're like, I already feel stressed out because I should have been here for 8, but I've had to like, it's really hard to get out of that routine. Is probably the hardest thing that I found in the first 12 months. It's like, it's okay to make time in those like 8 hours to do things that are gonna like, just get you refocused or give you some time to switch off, or like for you with like your young family and stuff. But it is hard because you always feel like you're chasing that like 8 till 4 window that we've become so
and
accustomed to.
Our conditioning, right? You must work 9 till 5 or a variation of, you know. No, you don't have to. You must do X number of hours. No, you don't. It's about getting the work done that you need to get done in the way that works best for you. So I work after 8 o'clock quite a few nights a week. I definitely work weekends. Every other weekend when I don't have my son, I work most of it. And that's okay for me. You know, like, I'll go out to a bar, have a glass of wine and sit there with my laptop. I'm happy. You know, I'll change it up. I won't do that on a Monday. I'll do that on a Saturday. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's just more my business is my second baby. I love it and I want it to grow. So of course I'm going to put the time and energy in. My first baby comes first and the hours that he needs me. So that's the way I kind of flip the lens. And I use techniques like the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
That's a really good one for focusing on single tasks and getting things ticked off, but really well done and really quickly, not just sort of like half doing it and then moving on to something else. I feel like I've got potential ADHD. I've got a lot of the symptoms. I'm that girl that has 95 tabs open. I've got 7 things going on at once. I'll use my phone and my keys 100 times a day. I've got lots of the traits, so I'm going sort of through a diagnosis. I'm not really worried about it myself. It's more a case of it would be nice to understand if that is who I've been all these years. But I think I've had to work with that too. I've had to think, okay, how can I single focus on one thing and get that one thing done well? But also flex that up a bit, because you do also need to change how you work and change your location and change your activities. And when I do creative stuff, or if I write a LinkedIn post, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'll go to a nice coffee shop. If I've got a focus, I need to be in my office and I need some peace.
I think the question that I was going to ask is obviously around business owners, co-founders, whatever it may be. What are their common mistakes around mental health? And I think I've learnt one from talking to you already, in terms of, I always imagine coaching or therapy help, in essence, like almost like there to just fix a problem and get you back to normal. But actually, you said it as well, it's about optimization, about making people better, and that's a massive opportunity area for it all. What are the other kind of common mistakes or even the misconceptions that you fight daily against this sort of thing?
The biggest one is I don't need it yet. You know, I'm not there, to your point. Or I haven't got the time. You know, we talked about this earlier, didn't we? You know, like you book in some time. I'm guilty of this too. I've always had a coach. I haven't got time. I'm 3 weeks late for my second or third ADHD coaching session. Like I just haven't had the time. It has coincided with half term, but I will make the time. There are things that I think we have to accept as well and not punish ourselves. I think it can become quite toxic if you're trying to elevate your mental state through something that you then keep reprimanding yourself for not. And if time has been a struggle for a particular phase, maybe 2-3 weeks, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, it's okay to start. You can always come back. I always say that as founders, we're kind of like pilots, and we've plotted our direction and we're kind of there. And with a business, it's okay, isn't it, to sort of veer off course and try something new. You can correct course, you can come back to your direction, or you can kind of throw things around, see what sticks, and say, actually, that's a really good idea for us. We should try that. And it's really good to be nimble. When it comes to the core well-being pillars, like things like sleep, diet, exercise, being mindful, they're really important. Of course, we need things like connection and other things, nature and all of that as well. But the core pillars, if we haven't got those in place, you can't deviate from those for too long. So this is the same logic of being a founder doesn't always apply to our mental health. And I think that's a bit of a disconnect for founders to really kind of understand. We push ourselves so hard because we want to. There's only so far that we can go before we'll break. So you have to start carving out recovery time, because the highest performers in the world spend as much time recovering as they do training. And I think that's the reframe that we all need when we're starting businesses and growing businesses.
Yeah, it's funny about the deviation, because it is annoying how, like, I'll go back to, like, you called it the wheel of well-being, but those things like fitness, recovery, it's annoying how much better they make you feel, if that makes sense. Like, because, so Brendan and I at the start of the year, we did 75 hard, so like no sugar, worked out twice a day, etc., for like 75 days. We've stopped, and I have fallen off that wagon massively. Like, I ate an entire box of milk tray and a chocolate bar in the office yesterday, and I like sat back and it was like, I'm less focused. I definitely don't feel as good. Like, I'm getting less sleep. This week I probably made 2 pretty big mistakes that I hadn't made in the last 11 months, and I was like, it's so annoying how much better it feels. Like, it's so much harder to do, like you say, carving out the time, even to find like half hour for a workout. Yeah. But it does make you feel so much better.
It does. And I think maybe the middle ground is somewhere in between the extremes of where you were and maybe the box of milk tray and the thing.
It was
in
good.
one sitting.
Half a box of milk tray.
I think 80-20 is always the rule for me. Like, it's like, and I flip that. Don't get me wrong. There are times I'm 80% not doing the right things. But I think being aware, being conscious, being mindful, allowing. There's so many times things go wrong as a parent, and you've just got to. I get a phone call. You've got to pick up your son in 10 minutes. We've got no water. I live in a village that has a problem with water supply, and all of a sudden our water's switched off. The whole town closes. All the coffee shops are closed. The schools are shut. I'm like, what era is this? What age are we living in? But then you've just got to roll with it. You can either sit there and get angry about things. And I think how you choose to react in life is very symptomatic of where you are mentally. If you're screaming at cars in front of you because they're going too slow, if you're getting irritated in the supermarket because of the queue, if someone starts picking out 2p's to make up their £3, shopping bill, and you're sat there going, I think you've got to then have a look at your stress levels. You've got to kind of stand back a bit and say, well, where am I? If you're snapping at your partner, if you're crying over things, if you're just noticing that you're talking negatively to yourself, there's lots of tells, and the red flags are really important. Like, get to know your red flags. Yours will be different to mine. And when you know that you're beginning to show them, whether we listen to them or not is up to us, but they can be really powerful in stopping us from getting further down that cycle.
I notice for me, it's how angry I get on the golf course. Genuinely it is. So when we first started playing at the start of this year, I think there was one day where I walked into a bush and just started hacking with our golf club because I was so angry. And I went home to Alina, my partner, and said, I'm not in a good place. I should have been angry.
But also, the 2 examples you gave then, I'm feeling like, because... But
which one? The car and the change?
The car when I've got to drop my son off at nursery before work, and I feel like I need to get on. I've got a lot of work to do. Sometimes I'm like, come on, like move, get faster. So I'm trying to chill out in that respect. Talking to you about it, I'm going to calm down a bit. but it's also the till. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, the amount of people. Like, because I'll go to the shop like early morning after my gym session, so get home. I just avoid it. I hate the self checkout now, but I just use it to avoid the people being so slow on the tills as well. But so there's ways around it. But I think there's so much I want to ask you. It's opened up so many questions. But I think what I'm trying to ask is it about balance? Is it about like making sure, because you've said to me a million times, like, we need to, this next year, this next 2 years, whilst we're developing the business, we need to go all in. And I understand that. But I'm thinking like, okay, what does all in mean? Is that the time that I've got available for business? Because I've got my kids, I've got to look after them, you know, I've got to do stuff around the house. Like, how do you fit it all in? Is this about techniques that help you find that balance and get better at doing each of those things?
I think so. I think it's about building strong foundations on which you can then build. So if your foundations are wobbly, from the basics around eat, sleep, be present, be connected, be in nature. If we think about those as the core things, primal things we need, we weren't designed to sit in four walls with no, we were not designed.
In a room like this,
we needed to be a part of a tribe, you need to have some form of basics in place. And then once you know what they are, and once you're committed to making sure that, yes, they will fluctuate, but can you make sure you're conscious to each other? Have you got something that's going to kind of pull you back in and say, look, come on, we just need to take an afternoon off today. Let's go and focus. Let's recalibrate. Let's just leave. Work will still be here tomorrow. And having that mindset and allowing is really important. And then you can start to build. And yeah, of course, you work together. So getting your head straight around what all in means is fundamental, and being on the same page. But it might manifest differently for you both. All in can mean something to some of us, which might mean, that means all of my time I need to give that's spare, but that's not going to probably be very healthy for you, because that means that you're going to have no downtime outside of being a parent and working. And it could be more around what the particular goals are and being really focused on achieving those and what the steps are to get there, as opposed to seeing it around time and different energies. So I think we all have to, like, coaching can help with all of that. Obviously, it's very much around achievements and helping you move forward. But I think rather than balance, it's probably integrate. It's like, how can I better integrate my life and whatever my nuances are with what I'm trying to achieve with my work, and, make it more cohesive, make it a little bit more fluid in between the two, and not beating yourself up if something goes wrong.
There's a stat on your website at the moment. This it might still be there in the new one, I'm not sure, which is about it's something like 80% of UK adults feel uncomfortable about talking about their mental health.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because of historic conditioning that we kind of crack on and man up, to use that phrase, that I hate. I think as humans, we all have emotional intelligence, and that's what separates us as a species, right? That's why we are as brilliant as we are. It's the emotional stuff that we have and that we bring forward. People are, like, my parents didn't talk about their mental health problems. Their parents, absolutely not. Like, it wasn't even a discussion point. We're in a space now where the conversation's opened up dramatically, yet the stigma within a workplace is real, because the perception is still there that somebody internally, if I share where I'm at, they're going to view me as not up to the job, not up to the promotion, not up to the pay rise, not up to the new project. I don't want to risk that, so I'm going to keep that over here. And then you get this whole presenteeism problem, because people are dealing with all that stuff without showing up. So yeah, that stat's real. And actually, when we see stats around 1 in 6, 1 in 4 of us have mental health, I disregard them, because we all have it. That's my point on it. But I think talking to someone at work or talking about it generally, it's really hard. So that's what we're trying to do, is deconstruct stigma by using coaching as a methodology, because it's actually really empowering, it's really positive, it's helpful, but also recognising that we're all going to break at times, and that's okay. And if we are the most resilient people, we've got really strong capacity to withstand stress and navigate life, that's also fine. But can you be better? Can you perform in a way that's going to leave you less stressed, even if stress isn't overwhelming you?
How do you bring it into an organisation? So this is something that in previous roles I think we've struggled with. And you said it earlier around, like, people ask you if you're okay, but they they want you to say yes because they won't know how to handle the no side of things. And I think for me personally, one of the things that I really struggled with, right, like when you have OCD, you tend to develop OCD as a way of trying to control the things that you can't control.
Okay.
And I was always scared of opening up there because I was like, if I open up on this, like, I just don't want it to impact my future career, and like career progression was really important to me.
I hear you.
As an organisation, how can you develop a culture that like kind of shows it's okay to have those conversations?
A few things. So you need to have, like I always use the analogy, you can't grow a mango tree in Iceland, and we can't come and rock up to an organisation and create bountiful mango trees when the culture is Icelandic. You know, so you've really got to have the right attitudes, the right role modelling, the right leadership in place. But equally, what I think, and this is why I've created 50/50, is you need an external team to deliver the coaching or the therapy. Really hard to have in-house HR members, and often it is the members of the HR team that are the coaches, that are the people that people would go to. And often you have that confidence to go to them around a business matter, that you might have an issue with a colleague or an employee, and you can go to them in confidence and talk to them about what the next stage might be. However, it's really hard to do that when it's about your own personal mental health and well-being. And yes, some companies have got it right and they've got a couple of people that are trusted and it seems to work. But as you grow, it becomes really difficult to have that trust. So externalizing that and having something like what we do within the workplace can basically, it creates a green light to people to go and work on themselves. The way we work with companies in a way that what we try and do is use their language, their positioning, and how they want to talk about the culture. So we mould to each individual company's way of being. And then we talk about it as this is space. It's like, this is space that we're providing for you on the company dime. This is you. Nothing is off the record. Nothing is off the table. Everything is off the record. And that's really important because they know that there's no reporting back. It's not going to go on their record, and they can be really authentic, which means we get to root cause challenges very quickly, whereas you dance around them a lot if you're trying to do some sort of in-house support. And then what we do is we have a look at all of the stuff that's going on through the coaching sessions, and we pull out the emerging themes and trends in a very anonymous way, and we report on that back to the organisations, which helps them to create that culture. So you'll find the companies we work with have posters of us up in the kitchens. People put openly in their diary 50/50 coaching. See my 50/50 coach. It's talked about positively. We're doing wellbeing webinars at the same time. We're doing guided meditations, things like that. We're trying to be all in on the culture piece with them.
Do you get companies that try and make it mandatory to force all of their staff to go and have at least one conversation with your team?
If we work with a team or a smaller business, sometimes they've done that. Or it might be that the leadership team, they want to do a bit, because the role modelling is really important. Again, that analogy, you can do all this work, you have all this vision, you can have all the people taking support as they need it. But actually, if managers are saying, sit at your desk, don't take a break, and WhatsApping you at 10 o'clock at night, putting unmanageable workloads on you, promising you promotions and never delivering, not communicating on all these potential fall areas, if they're real, that's all that's going to do is just create uncertainty, stress, anxiety in team members. And then also an unwillingness to change because they think that they're going to get penalised for it. So they're not going to take that break. They're not going to, go to that coaching session because their boss hasn't, and their boss doesn't seem to even let them have a lunch break. So why would the boss let them actually physically take 45 minutes to go to coaching sessions, even though I know the senior team have said I can?
Why do people stay in hostile work environments?
I don't know. Why do they?
It's weird, right? Because we've all been there, and we've been in some environments that have been questionable, but we've stayed there for 4 or 5 years. Is it just the fear of unknown? Do you think? Massively,
and I think also it depends where you are financially in your life, if you've prepared or not, if you've got a bit of a backup. I've always been quite good with my money. I've always had money stashed or money invested. Ever since I was a kid, I've always had the mentality, which I'm trying to teach my son now: spend half, save half. And that's stood me well. Bearing in mind I've had to bootstrap a business, and it's not been easy. I'm not taking a massive salary. I'm not taking much at all at the moment. Everything's going back in. So, yeah, I'd say fear of the unknown, financial fear. So, clinging on, and I think a bit of inertia at times. I genuinely think some people can't be bothered. But I think if you're unhappy, then you've got to take action. If you're okay, and you're kind of, you're not amazingly happy, but you're not. I would always be like, well, I don't want to be really happy, so I'm not a plodder in life, so I can't identify with that. But some people will. Some people just want to rock up to work, don't need any drama, and will go home. They're not love their job, but they don't hate it. It's fine. So I think you've got to work out where you're at and see what's important for you. You know, I had a comment at HSBC which was like, carry on, you're amazing, you're brilliant, you'll be like her. She was on a BlackBerry during Labour and she's just ace and we love her. And I'm like, yeah, this is a final nail in the coffin, and I resigned the next day. I really did. By that point, I'd already had all those moments in time where I'd recognised I was not in the right space. It was very toxic at the time. You know, this was 2012. This was not a world of mental health conversations. This was fit in a box, get your grades, then you can start to make decisions.
Funny, there's always a tipping point, and something so drastically different. Yours was someone using a BlackBerry during Labour. Mine was I missed a Liverpool-Chelsea game, and I was like, enough is enough.
I can't take it anymore. Yeah, I hear you.
This is all obviously so eye-opening for me. I've got so much to process now. Like, oh, okay, I need to wake up to all of this. But if someone is sitting there at their workplace and they've realised, okay, I'm stressed, or I'm not feeling good in this way and that way, how can they go about telling their employer?
It is a really hard conversation, and it will be different for everyone. I think the best thing they can do is go to their immediate manager, unless there's a real hostile relationship there and that's not feasible. Generally, they're the person that knows you most, and what you want is to be able to just have a face-to-face conversation. And really what we need to be seeing more is the managers leading this with every employee, so there's an opportunity to bring that stuff up. It's naturally there. Yeah. But if it's not, it's about, I think, a face-to-face conversation where there's a bit of authenticity, or even if you're not that way inclined and you don't like the face-to-face, just a well-written email about where you're at, and can we just have a bit of time in the diary to talk outside of project and outside of task, a little bit about where I'm at right now, because I am noticing my feelings are changing, or my productivity is dipping, or I'm really struggling to get this particular piece of work done, and I think it's to do with what I'm going through at the minute, and could we have some space to just chat so I can bring you up to speed with where I'm at. And I think we have to be just really pragmatic about it. Here, I'm here, and I want to be there, and I need to let you know, and can we find a way to work on this together? And I think if we take the emotion out of it and just be factual, it's a good start.
Should we finish off with some quick fire questions?
I think so.
Do you want to take the first one?
Okay, cool. So, bit of a change of pace for you. We've gone quite deep there, and I'm kind of processing. But what's the best bit of business advice you've ever received?
Don't always throw the grenade.
Oh, what does that mean?
Don't always feel like you have to disrupt and kind of be really, different. Sometimes it's good to just know what you're good at, do what you do. And we positively disrupt at 50/50. We're trying to, change the narrative there. But yeah, I think that was a good piece of advice that I got a long, long time ago.
Nice. What is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've made?
Through working at Octopus, I've invested in Octopus shares as an ex-employee. Octopus shares, and that's been really good for me.
Nice.
Do you have a favourite failure of yours?
I love the concept of favourite failures, because I always use the concept of falling forwards rather than falling backwards. Like, as long as you fall, you've got to fall forward. So many. I mean, I don't know if I have a favourite. I just constantly fail. I'm coming up with new ideas that don't get off the ground, or I'll make a decision and it's not the right decision, but I just always try and learn from it. And I always, at the end of the week, think, what can I leave behind, because I don't need to carry it, and what can I learn from? So.
And then the final one, if you were starting again, same business, 50/50, but you had to start from scratch, 0 clients tomorrow, what would you do differently this time around?
I don't think I would do anything differently.
Why?
Because I assessed the need. I knew it was real, and I went out and I made it happen. Like, I genuinely made a business out of nothing, And I think, yes, it would be nice to have more money behind me and things like that, but I don't think I would physically do anything differently. I spent a lot of time getting the coaching right, investing in the coaching training, making sure that we've got all the strong foundations in place from what we can grow and build on. I don't think I would have done anything differently. I would have perhaps liked to have had a different context. At the time I was going through endometriosis surgery, I was relocating, I was navigating a relationship breakdown. It would be nice to not have to build a business within that context, if I'm honest. That I would change. And then the pandemic hit and all of that stuff, but these are out of my control. So what I could actually control, probably nothing. I didn't think I'd say that.
I bet that feels quite nice though. It's probably a nice feeling though.
Yeah, kind of. Unexpected.
Perfect. George, any questions for you?
That final one, yeah? Okay, I was wrong. We have one more question. Brendan, do you want to say that one then?
Okay, so what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give to someone starting their own business?
I would say really take your time to get to think about whether running a business is what you want. I think there's a lot of glorification over starting your own business, being a founder, all of this, and there's a whole kind of culture of this on TikTok and on all the socials, and I think it comes with a lot of risk. Yes, there's high potential reward, but I think if you are someone that craves certainty, that you are going to struggle to be flexible, that you don't want to work outside of your core hours, that you don't like to problem solve, you're probably not enjoying people challenges, then it's probably not going to be for you, and you need to really think about why do you want to do it. So I'd always press on when I coach people around this. Why are you looking to set up your own business? What is it you want to achieve? And if it's not strong enough, I say to them to go away and to come back with a really strong why, and then let's try and, if you want to do it, we can do it, but you can do it. But it's I think that too many people come in and go, yeah, I'm going to do that. I've got gardening leave for 3 months. I'm just going to set up a business. It's a lot. It's a huge amount. It's the biggest time consumption that you'll ever see.
That shocks me a little bit. Yeah. Coming from a business owner of a successful business, I don't know why. It just
does it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
because I feel excited about owning a business. It's probably because it's fresh, it's new, but it's that kind of freedom and the liberty it kind of gives you. And
yeah.
So
and it does. It affords that, doesn't it? It affords the liberty. It affords the freedom. But there's a huge amount of trade-off to get that. Yeah. And I think you've got to be willing to put that in. I mean, the hours I've worked and that I still need to work in order for this, and I'm nowhere near at a point where I consider us successful yet. So for me, it's how can we help the next generation of business owners to really make that own decision as an informed decision that is not I'm not suggesting I want to take the wind out of their sails. It's more, I want them to be really grounded and really clear on what they want, why they want it, and the reality of actually making that happen.
Fair. Sorry, one final question from me. Right. You've said it there in terms of you're nowhere near where you want to be. What does success look like then? It's
so different for everyone, isn't it? Yeah. For me, I just want to get to a certain size of business where I can afford to have the right team in place and take some of the responsibilities off my kind of list that I have to do all the time. I want us to be I've got a set number of companies I want us to work with. I've got some visions, I've got some goals that we're working towards. So, I'm on a 5-year plan and I'm 3 years in, and I'm hoping that we can start to sort of tip into more of a scaling phase as we kind of grow, and I'm hoping. And then there was the election, and there's what next? We've had the cost of living crisis, we've had the pandemic, now we've got the election, and we've had wars in between. What next is the constant context conversation, right? So we've just got to keep going despite that. Businesses can thrive regardless and can grow, but I have to keep pushing for more. But I'm not one of those people that was going to be never happy. I have been that person, and I have grown through my own personal development. That I know that as long as I've got a decent salary that can keep me financially stable, that can enable me to provide for the life that I want for me and my son, and to have that security in place, that's really important for me. And that's the bit that, you know, you forego as a founder because you throw everything back in because you want to grow and you want to do the best by the business. So that will be successful for me when I'm kind of more financially stable. The business has grown to some level that we've got some staff in-house that are really leading the way without me having to literally oversee everything.
Awesome. I think we're done.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. That's it. Thank you very much.
Well done. Thank
Thanks.
you.